Hey everyone, True here, and it is time for a new tier list based on data. As always, we are going to go through the new units first, then go through all the tier changes, and at the very end, rank and tier all the best units in Evertale at the moment for Arena in more detail. First up, we have Light Apollo and Artemis. This dual unit is the first one that manages the seemingly impossible and combines burn and stealth in the same skill set. And it has a lot of interesting stuff going on, but it has some weaknesses. I think they have a problem with poison, and also, yes, they can potentially gain the stun ward, but I think it's too conditional and too rare that we actually see it. So, yeah, I'm not super convinced by it. I said it in my initial review on her. Probably the skill or tier ceiling for them is the S tier, and for now they are very, very close to that. But for now, they are landing in the A tier, just below the S tier border. On the other hand, we have another light unit that came out after them, and that is Light Anya. And for her, it's an entirely different story. I mean, she is a 100% guard, and that in itself is already a very good argument for a high tier. And additionally, she is also a stun absorber, so something that is very relevant with the starting formations that we see right now with Storm Jeanne, Lancelot, and others roaming around. And she might not be an absolute stun counter, at least not on her own, but still she has some decent capabilities to survive even after she is stunned because of that absolutely crazy kind of 75% heal for the first few hits, and then also the endure passive she always gains if she survives and didn't just have it. So that is really, really decent from Light Anya, and I'm gonna talk a bit more about her later because she is going to one of the top tiers. For Earth Gyurelle and Earth Ossia, we don't have quite enough data yet to tier them reliably, so they will only be tiered in the next edition, but we can already say and see based on the data that Gyurelle is, as expected, not that great for Arena, at least in servers that are already established. And Earth Ossia, on the other hand, has a lot of potential, I think. I personally also pulled for her, and with the AI handling and her survivability, while also disrupting the enemy team significantly, I think she could go quite far in my tier list. Moving on to the tier changes, and we start off with the F tier, and we have a few new joiners that have no usage in the 100 top teams that I looked at anymore, so basically falling to 0% usage, and that is, for example, the Ice unit Yuki, the Survivor style unit Vesh, Dark Elmina, that kind of stealth entry unit, Dark Callen, one of the newest units in F tier for sure. She, as a poison unit, has trouble in the current meta, and even for poison units, they are just much better options now, even if she can be quite lethal if she gets off that savage mega poison sometimes. Another poison unit joins her as well, and that is Earth Rainer, and I think deservedly so. She is a unit that can for sure mess up your own team, and that is always not nice to see. On the other hand, for E tier, we see one new joiner from below, and that is Orzakron, the kind of war machine that has a really, really strong stun entry and can possibly be used as a pseudo guard. Unfortunately, without hold ground, he goes to the E tier, and he's also joined, and I think not quite deservedly so, but I mean, the data is what it is, by Theo. And Theo has been only released around 9 months ago. And Theo is that kind of Earth support unit that can really be quite annoying to face, but ultimately his impact is a bit limited. I mean, he has the healing pulse, which combined with hold ground units can be really, really nice. But yeah, it's 1% usage for a Theo. In the D tier, we see one of the former grades fall further, and that is Dark Reset. Basically, the ultimate poison unit that was released in 2019. She is just falling and falling more and more quickly. She was really good at the beginning of 2.0, which already is kind of sensational given she was already out for 1.5 years back then. But now, 2 years later, we see her land in the D tier because her survivability is just not there, and additionally, her damage output in the current meta is also nothing special anymore. The C tier, as you see it here, is actually also the new C tier. Nothing changes in that tier. So moving on to the B tier, and here we have one new joiner from buff, and that is Ursa. Interestingly, the only SSR autoguard that only has a 60% chance of redirecting attacks to themselves. And yeah, it's really not super surprising. I mean, she has the elemental advantage against Storm, but now we have another guard, and there's only so many guards that can give you additional value, especially with that kind of 40% chance that she doesn't actually guard your units. She could potentially be a liability, and plus she's also already a really old unit, so even B tier is still quite good considering her age. In the A tier, we see another unit fall down, and that is Lighty Beaky, who was only holding on to S tier barely in the last edition. Now she really dropped down to A tier. She can still be quite good. She has the Banish skill, which can completely throw the enemy team off balance. And she has that kind of Vengeance Strike, which is really strong. The Guard Cleaver, which is also decent. But overall, her passives were just much better 1 year ago. The Lucky Moris, really nice stuff. But now with the kind of Lancelot and other deadly passives around, they sometimes actually become a bit of a liability. And on the other hand, her Hold Ground Plus is still really good, but she only heals back 1/3 of her HP, and that's her only way to heal back. She cannot reset her Hold Ground Plus, so that is also comparably not that great anymore. Also, I feel like her AI is not perfect. Let's put it like that. The S tier actually stays the way it is, in the composition that it is, except for one unit, and that is a unit that is actually rising from the S tier to the SS tier, and that is Freya. I'm quite positively surprised by that myself. She really gained a lot of points, true power points, this month. And I'm not 100% certain why that is. I'm not sure if that is already an expectation of the new Earth units. Probably not. Probably a bit too early for that. But on the other hand, she's always been a really good unit. She's a much better temporary guard than Anya, and she has also some kind of spirit producing capabilities in terms of if she gets attacked multiple times, and she can also be working in a non-burn team as well. Very important, of course, the kind of resettable Hold Ground Plus, which is relatively easy to achieve because of her skill sets and her passives. She just needs to have 2 spirit available when she gets her turn, for the most part, because she has so many options to reach the burn status by herself. So that was quite a speedrun, not that many changes in the tier list this time, but I can already say this, there is a methodology change planned for the next one, so be on the lookout for how that will influence the tier list. I myself am already very curious to see how things will move around due to that. It should make for an even more reliable tiering based on data. Starting it off in the top units tier, is Light Mirai, who is also joining the SS tiers. Still really decent support, struggling with the stealth units, of course, or rather all these units that are now ignoring passives potentially. She can still produce some really good spirit for you though. Sun Wukong, the second stealthy vengeance unit, really nice survivability sometimes. She can be hit multiple times and then she possibly gets ignored and can do the full charge again, giving her spirit, giving her all these charges, giving her kind of charged resolved passive new light, and that all works very well. Her biggest drawback is potentially that she's just a single attack unit. The same cannot be said for Water Callen, who still fell down quite a bit. She keeps the SS tier rating for now, but she is a bit in trouble. I mean, on the one side, that could be due to the rising storm prevalence, but on the other hand, she kind of lost her spot in the starting platoon where she was often used. Now she often has to be used later on and isn't quite as impactful there. Also, I do have my gripes with some of her AI decisions, especially as to which units she exchanges with an imposter, which obviously is one of her great mechanics that absolutely disrupt the enemy team massively, kind of leaving it potentially guardless, for example. But savage units really like to kill that imposter. And of course the spirit loot is still quite nice. 73% usage for her, and it's just 34% for Storm Ludmilla, but she is a much newer unit, so that has to be considered. And she also goes to the SS tier, especially a great combination with Light Anya because of her kind of command and combo skill. And she's also wickedly fast with her kind of charges, reducing her time units used for a skill and also producing spirit for your team. So really good support unit that can also dish out a lot of damage. Mizuchi, as I said it multiple times already, she is one of the very best finishers in the game. When there are no longer guards on the field, she can basically hit freely with her time drain plus, as long as she has one spirit available, and that makes it really hard to kill her. Of course, she's weak to poison, and that might become more relevant now that we see a few new poison units, but still a really good finisher with that kind of counter skin and then being possibly immediately able to strike back. Then we have Bright Astrid, the 100% Fire Guard. Not much to say about her at this point. She can really be strong in terms of kind of damage output if she gets to pull off her Flip Inferno, and that might also be more interesting the more Earth units we see in the meta. But for now, obviously still the drawback that she's not really ideal for your own team in some scenarios, but still 67% of top teams use her, even though burn is rarely used there. Then we have Dark Jeanne, still somehow holding on to the SS tier, possibly also profiting a bit with the Earth Ossia release, and also what can also not be neglected, if she is not killed by a stealth attack, then obviously we still have Michaela appearing, and she's also kind of nice playing with Storm Jeanne if Storm Michaela needs to replace someone with Storm Jeanne. So then her entry passives strike again. So Dark Jeanne and Dark Michaela still somewhat relevant with 72% usage, but obviously on a downwards trajectory, currently still number 10 though. And then we have Storm Antares, the oldest unit in the top 10 with the stun all skill, obviously survival based. So after 300 time units, one of her main features kind of wears off, but she could still potentially get to use her Thunder Heart, and that is always nice. Also kind of similar to Mizuchi and also Dark Jeanne to some degree, a unit that you would probably rather put late in your arena battalion. Then we see Earth Anya, one of the few units that actually gains significant points compared to February. And yeah, I mean, we do see new poison units being released, and we do still see very much prevalent storm units, and so it is not really a surprise that we see this 100% poison earth guard kind of bloom up again a bit. So 83% usage for Earth Anya, quite nice for her, and 80% does Water Snow White have, who goes to number 7 for now, on a downward trajectory a bit, and this is hardly a surprise. She kind of lacks that kind of hold ground or endure mechanics, so really susceptible to storm attacks especially. But in a sleep team, or if she gets that kind of kill chain going, she can still be very good. 500k ahead of Earth Anya. She actually still gets to keep her SSS tier spot, but barely. And the next unit is over 500k ahead of her in true power, and that is Bright Ludmilla, another water unit, the highest rated one right now. She is a guard that has been around for quite a while, 100% guard. If she gets her Shield of Eldine down, still very deadly, but with stun floating around, it's not as certain that she gets that Shield of Eldine down actually. But also worth to point out, she is the only unit by far in my data that has 100% usage, so literally every top team that I looked at had her in their arena lineup. At number 5 we have Lancelot, who is struggling a bit. She still gets the SSS tier, of course. If she gets that deadly momentum going, it can be absolutely disturbing for the enemy team. But on the other hand, she really needs to get that first kill first, and her low speed is really a bit troublesome on the one side, and on the other side, now that we see kind of new earth units introduced, that is also not that great for her. Of course, she still has a lot of things going for her, but let's just say 2 months ago she was able to do much more with her skill set. Another Storm unit still holding on to the SSS tier is Storm Elmina, but she's also struggling a bit, and that is really not that surprising given that that kind of low hate environment isn't that relevant anymore. I said it multiple times before, she already has been relegated to Platoon 4 in most teams. She still has 94% usage, so worth to point out that most top players still think she has a place in their arena battalions, but part of that is certainly legacy related. For example, if you would ask me at this point, should I pick Storm Elmina or Sun Wukong, I would at this point probably go for Sun Wukong, honestly. But now we go for the top 3, which absolutely deserve to be in the SSS tier, and Light Anya is actually going straight to the SSS tier, which is interesting because there were some reservations when she came out, a bit of disappointment on her skills and her potential for survivability, but I think these doubts are kind of over at this point. She has a usage rate at 75% already just briefly after her release, and that puts her squarely into the SSS tier. On the one hand, she can absorb a lot of stuns, and if you run her with a Gift Turner or someone like Storm Ludmilla, then she can actually get the turn again, give an instant turn as well later on if she gets the turn, and possibly do a life flip attack, kind of bringing her up again. And the HP are truly high. I mean, she has the highest HP in the entire game, so hitting through her even with an elemental advantage and one-shotting her is in most cases just a dream. And then she will unlock her endure, will gain those kind of crazy 75% heals at first, and also if you don't actually stun her, she becomes even more annoying to kill, because then she can do her life flip attacks, the kind of instant gift turns for her team. The only skill that kind of feels out of place is the Banishing Avenger. I have seen that happen in a battle just once so far, and I mean, one main reason is that she usually starts in the first platoon, and there's just not a lot of kills there yet. I mean, she is the guard, so if she dies, she obviously cannot use the Banishing Avenger against her killer anymore. And I think that skill isn't that great. That said, when the meta shifts, etc., etc., she might be used in later platoons, and then that kind of Banishing Avenger, if she gets the turn and isn't stunned to death, can actually gain quite some relevance. Number 2, again, is Earth Mysha climbing back up, and she's still very relevant with the Stealthy Vengeance that helps her against really any negative passives and produces some spirit and enrages her. So that in itself is already very good, but then she's also one of the few units that can actually do some serious stuff to potentially stop the number 1, which is Storm Jeanne. Because oftentimes both Storm Jeanne and Michaela need to be killed at the same time. There's just otherwise so many possibilities that Storm Michaela just revives her sister again and then also resets some entry passives, resets some guards, etc, etc. So Earth Mysha with that kind of double attack with the elemental advantage is one of the few units that can very effectively break that cycle. But breaking the cycle or not, there's no question about it. The number 1 right now is Storm Jeanne, released on New Year's Eve. She is an absolute menace, kind of stunning your team to death. Then also Storm Michaela, who has that kind of entry passives that makes her an indestructible guard for nearly 100 time units. And if Storm Jeanne does survive for quite a while, then her Survivor's Judgment is a brutal attack, ignoring pretty much everything from damage reductions to stealth, and with the healing rage that could actually deal 750% unreduced damage. So there you have it, the latest updated Evertale Arena tier list based on data. Only 1 in 4 of you who are watching this right now are subscribed, so if you find it helpful at all, please do consider subscribing to my channel. I'm not earning anything from this, so while I do love statistics, it is mainly my subscribers who keep me motivated to continue putting 10+ hours into these videos. The next tier list will bring a major overhaul. I'm working on an improved methodology that considers even more factors, so stay tuned. Good luck on your next summons, preferably of top tier units that you can see here, and as always, thanks for watching.